Hey, what's up guys? Guardian here, coming you guys with a deck profile update on my Majesty Lord Blaster deck. So it's been a while for this deck on the channel, and yeah, the deck has changed a little bit since the original one that I did. And yeah, MLB's got a couple of support cards that can help it out, but it also has some other cards which are promo cards, which I spoke about recently in a discussion video. And yeah, I wanted to bring you guys a deck which didn't use the promos because this version of the deck actually doesn't use them. And also we have the new Grade 1 promo coming out soon that gives MLB multi-attack. So if you do have the Grade 2 Emmeline and the Grade 1 when it comes out with set 9, I believe, if you're able to get your hands on them, by all means go for it and try the deck out. But if you want a promoless version of the deck that's a bit more accessible to use and pick up, then hopefully this will satisfy your needs, because I've been playing this deck for a couple of months now, and it's actually pretty enjoyable. And the thing I like most about this deck is that the way it plays, it actually makes the blasters a bit more useful when it comes to utilizing their retiring skills, which is pretty cool. So yeah, without further ado, let's get stuck into the deck, and I'll show you guys what I'm playing. So to start with the ride line, of course, we are going to be starting with the typical units of Wingull Brave, Little Sage Merrin, Blaster Blade, and of course MLB. Yeah, this has stayed the same. Still think Blade is the better choice in terms of the Blaster for the Grade 2, just because you need to guarantee whiff on the Merrin skill to get the Wingull out from your soul, which in this deck we kind of don't want to do, because we actually want to see the other Blaster piece in the deck for MLB, and also Blade is still able to draw you a card, as long as your opponent doesn't have any reguards on the field to retire. But even if they do, we actually want to retire their units in this deck, which we'll get to in a bit to help support one of our rearguard units and its skill. And of course, MLB, if you've got Dark and Blade in the Soul, he has a continuous 2k power and critical, which is actually pretty nice even today. It just makes the deck very tanky and durable during games. And yeah, the fact that he's able to get an extra drive for 3 drive checks when you put a Dark in, and an additional form of retire if you put Blade into your soul, is very useful when it comes to the overall strategy of the deck. So yeah, so that is the typical ride line that we all know. So moving on to the main deck, we are of course going to be playing the 3 additional copies of MLB. You may also notice during the deck profile, one thing I was able to do in my time off of showcasing this deck, I was able to get a couple of rarity upgrades, which will be a nice treat for you all to see for this video. It's actually why it's kind of been a bit delayed, is that I've been waiting for the final couple of high rarity pieces to show up, which I'm happy to say have finally arrived. So yeah, we have those SPs now, which was pretty affordable to get. But yeah, of course, we need to be playing the 3 MLB in the main deck for the Persona Ride, of course. No explanation there, just for the Persona Ride. And then next with the grade 3s, we have the main unit of the deck, I would say, that it's built around, which is 4 copies of Reverse Coil Knight Nuadha. So this card came out in set 4, funnily enough, so it was a while ago. Came in a nice holo rarity as well, which was pretty cheap to get. And it says, whilst in rear, once per turn, when this unit attacks, if there are no other rear guards on the field, both yours and your opponent's, this unit gets 5,000 power till end of turn, and at the end of that battle, you stand this unit. Now, this is really cool in the deck because, like I said, it puts your blasters more to use now, because you actually want to be retiring things with their skills. So Blaster Blade is an absolute house in this deck, which is great to say, because before it was kind of like, just single spot removal, which was kind of but now it has more of a purpose for this unit. And also, the cool thing with this deck is that we typically remove our own units. With MLB, he takes up the Blaster Blades and Blaster Darks himself, and we have other support cards in the deck that are able to remove themselves from the field after using their skills, which is really, really nice and synergizes perfectly with the way Nuadha wants to work. Now, also, MLB is great with Nuadha because you also have 3 drive checks, which, with MLB being 2 crit and 3 drives, it's pretty threatening. So more times than often, your opponent is going to perfect guard the MLB attack, depending on how their damage is looking. But the cool thing is that even if they do PG you, you can just dump all the other trigger effects onto your Nuadha, and then because it's going to be restanding at the end of the battle, you carry on over those additional trigger effects that you got and attack with them again, which is really, really cool. It's actually one of the ways that this deck is able to pull out a win, is because that additional power that you're carrying over with the Nuadha restand is just too much for the opponent to, block against. And can sometimes just be enough of a swing to pull the game into your favor, basically. So, yeah. Also, as you can imagine, pulling the over trigger from the 3 drives of MLB is really good when it comes to this, because he is a grade 3, which means it will be restanding and twin driving twice, which is incredible. So, yeah, big high roll, but really good payoff if that is able to happen, which isn't too far-fetched, because, like I said, MLB has 3 drives, so it can come up. So, yeah, really, really cool win condition, and it's, it doesn't require us to spend an organ on a promo card. So, yeah, I am all for Nuadha. I think it's a really, really cool card and synergizes perfectly in the deck. Now, to support the strategy, we're also playing a couple of order cards. We're playing the 2 copies of Sword of Judgment, and also the 2 copies of the Will to Pierce Through. Now, both of these are great in their own right. Sword of Judgment is able to spin a column, essentially, on the opponent's field, but it's also an out for us to get around resist-type units, because those are a little bit awkward. We can just attack into them sometimes, which is great, but you do have to remember that MLB, in order to put the rear guards into your soul, like Blade and Dark, he does need to attack a Vanguard, which is important to remember. But with the Sword of Judgment, we could say target a unit that's not got a resist skill, and if the resist unit is in that column with that other unit, we could just non-target remove it by scooping the column up altogether, which is fantastic. So I do think the Sword of Judgment is mandatory in this deck, just because it gets us out of that sticky situation, in case the opponent does have a unit like that, and then it kind of just turns off the deck and is a bit awkward. But if they have it in the front row, it is a potential unit that you could attack into, depending on the setup that you already have on the field. And then the Will to Pierce Through is also really good, not just because it can search our blaster units like Dark and get MLB's continuous skill, but also the fact that because it can search the blasters, it's also another way for us to search out retiring, so that we can actually clear the field up to help Nuadha get his restand off. So, yeah, it's not only just for consistency reasons, but also just so you can get the retiring skills of your blasters, basically. So, yeah. So that is it for the orders that we're playing. And these don't really conflict with one another, because the Will to Pierce Through, we're usually using that on our turn 3, and, sometimes not at all if we already have the blaster. And then the Sword of Judgment, we usually use this on turn 4, since you do need the Soul Blaster grade 3. So yeah, they don't really conflict with one another, and the timing in which you use them come up at different turns, basically. So that's pretty handy. So moving on over to the grade 2s. So, of course, we are going to be playing the 3 additional copies of Blaster Blade. Yes, he is amazing for the deck, not only because he is a blaster, but also because his retiring skill is really good. You can retire any grade 2 or greater on the field, and by putting him into the Soulbound MLB, you get to retire anything else, which is really good with just clear up and getting your opponent's units off the board to help facilitate the Nuadha. So, yeah. Blaster Blade, definitely a nice unit for the deck. At least now he's actually got more of a purpose to help the Nuadha, and the retiring does matter. And then, of course, we do have the other part with the blasters, which is the 4 Blaster Dark. Of course, with this, we need it for MLB, for his continuous skill, and the extra drive is really, really good for applying pressure. But also remember that he is a retire. We weren't really using it as much before, but definitely in this deck, even if you have to call something down like a draw trigger, or just something that you just don't need badly, can just give you that enableability to use Dark's Counterblast to spot retire something else. Because the benefit with Dark is that he's able to retire any unit on the field, when Blaster Blade can only retire grade 2s or greater. So that's rather clutch. And also Dark does get the 5k power as well, which can sometimes matter depending on if you go first or second, and being able to attack your opponent's Vanguard, which is very, very important to know of. So yeah, 4 copies of Dark, and I'm so happy I was able to get my Darks in SP now. That was the last thing I was waiting for, so super, super happy to own those. Alright, and then the final grade 2 of the deck, since we don't need too many of them, since we do rely on having the Nuadha on the front row, we also have the 4 copies of Cadwalla, which is a perfect unit for the deck because it's able to search for grade 2s or greaters, like our blasters, and including MLB, so it can help us search for Persona Rides for our turn 4, and even if we don't add anything, it still draws us a card, so we get a card back into our hand for for our opponent's turn for guarding, and the fact it's able to retire itself and get off the field is perfect. Yeah. Since you do need to make sure that not only do you get rid of your opponent's rear guards, but you also need to make sure that your rear guards leave the field as well, which is why I love the synergy that Nuadha has in this deck and the units that we have to support it. So yeah, Cadwalla, very, very good support card and works perfectly well in this version of MLB. And then that is it for the grade 2s. So for the grade 1s, it's pretty simple. We have 4 copies of Painkiller Angel, another unit that's able to get rid of itself and put a card back into our hand. And also just the boosting potential of this unit is really, really important to help our rear guards, hit our opponent's Vanguard, and just overall applying more pressure to our attacks. Like behind an MLB, MLB is going to be swinging for 23, which is really, really nice. So yeah, and the fact it's able to replace itself, absolutely perfect. So like Cadwalla, 4 copies of Painkiller is perfect for the deck. And then the final grade 1, of course, is just going to be our Sentinels with our 3 copies of the regular PG and our 1 Blitz Order. Pretty straightforward. No explanations needed there, really. And of course, last but not least, we have our triggers, which is pretty standard for the most part. We have our 1 over trigger, which is really, really good with Nuadha because it'll get the twin drive, it'll restand, then it'll twin drive again. Then we have the 4 skill crit. These are actually important for the deck. Sometimes it can kind of be like, whatever, doesn't really matter. But the fact that the crit is able to put itself into the soul, it means that it gives us another alternative booster to make our grade 2s hit something and also put itself into soul, so it remove itself from the field so that it doesn't interrupt Nuadha. So it's actually pretty good in the deck for the utility that it provides. And also soul can sometimes come up as well with the Painkillers and the Cadwallas. So yeah. And then, of course, we are playing the 4 more crit, and I thought I'd go with the shadow-looking crit, since we have like a light in the dark dragon in here now, which looks really, really cool from the Youthberg trial deck, which is nice. But yeah, 8 crit definitely, because you just want to see crits, and then if MLB ain't connecting, you want to put those crits on Nuadha, pressure with the Nuadha, restand it, attack again. So yeah, 8 crit all the way. And then to wrap the deck up, we have the 3 draw trigger, of course, so that we can see pieces. Also, draw triggers are really nice fodder for retiring Will Blaster Dark and just, PGs or whatever. Draw triggers are just always nice to have in the deck like this. That's very piece reliant. And then, of course, we have the 4 heal triggers, which decided to go with the Youthberg one since I'm already using the trial deck one for the crit. So, and also I think this one actually looks quite nice with the deck. It's got like a mix of like light and darkness to it in a way. So, yeah, those are the triggers. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but it does work out in the end. And yeah, overall, this deck's just really fun. Like MLB, he may not be a high contender when it comes to the meta scene, but with promos being a little bit annoying to get our hands on right now, it's nice to have a fallback option in the form of Nuadha, just because of the way he synergizes with the Blaster units as well. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile, and yeah, like always, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll have a deck log in the description, and yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. So like always, this is Guardian225, signing out.